Mm.
Okay, so welcome to our Parsha Reframed Torah Insights and Critical Thinking. This is Parshas Terumah, and part of Parshas Terumah is all about the building of the Mishkan, the laws that God gave to Moses about building the tabernacle that we will travel in the desert, which will be the foundational information about what will become the Beis Hamikdash in the future, the temple. And what's interesting is the materials that were used in the building of the tabernacle, a lot of atzei shitim, acacia wood or cedar wood, depending on which translation you're looking at. There's a lot of gold, there's a lot of silver, there's a lot of fabric, and the fabric is already colored fabric, especially colored fabric. So when the beginning starts about using atzei shitim, Rashi wants to ask the question, hey, where did they come up with wood in the middle of the desert, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Rabbi Tanchuma explains that Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov, our forefather, he foresaw with divine inspiration that his descendants would one day construct the tabernacle, a Mishkan, in the desert, and he therefore brought cedar trees with him down to Mitzrayim from Canaan and planted them there in Egypt, and he commanded his children that they should take the wood with them as they left Egypt because they would need it. And so here's that primary question of, like where'd they get the wood from? So the question is, it's true that trees do grow in the wilderness, but not necessarily that wilderness. That's more of a desert area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the question, well, what about traders who would usually supply wood for a fee? They certainly had plenty of money to do that with. What about traders that they could have bought the wood from as well and obtained it, right? So while we asking the question on Rashi, why is this question of Rashi for other answers, right? So the Rebbe points out, let's have everyone go on mute if you would, see if that solves the echo. Okay, are we still hearing an echo?
No.
Sounds good to me. Okay. So the Rebbe points to the distinctive wording in the pasuk, in the verse, about the donations to the tabernacle, because everyone had to. Hang on a second.
Bam, you're not muted.
Yep. Yeah, I'm here. But I'm just trying to catch in where the link is there. Okay. So when the tabernacle is going to be built, and Moshe asks for donations from everyone to bring to the tabernacle, we never read about giving a donation. What we talk about is the people were told to set aside donations, and then someone was told to take the donations, but there was never a collection. People didn't give. It was like they were told to come and take it. People were told to collect the donations, right? So as we look at the wording here, the wording of the Torah is telling us that the donations were readily available to be given. They were already put aside. That's where the question comes in. When it comes time for donating to the tabernacle, everything was already set aside for the donations. Therefore, all that was required to have is to have them collected, have them picked up. If the instructions would have been everyone should give their donations to the building of the tabernacle, it would imply that people had to first obtain the material, including additional acts of chopping down trees and purchasing wood, or etc. But the instructions were take the donations, meaning that whatever had to be picked up was already ready for pickup. Just had to be picked up. And now we can understand Rashi's. What Rashi is saying here is that if all these items were supposed to be readily available for collection on the spot, how do they have these massive logs of cedar wood? Of course, there's always a way to acquire it, but it wouldn't be normal to have it ready in an instant, just, pick it up. So this provides a unique problem, and such a problem calls for an explanation from someone like Rabbi Tanhuma, who tells us it was already thought of before, it was already grown in advance, it was already prepared for this purpose, right? That further answers another problem we had, which is that regarding to Techelis, when it came to the building of the Mishkan and the fabrics used, Rashi comments, a wool dyed in Techelis. Techelis is a no, they didn't use Amazon. The Techelis is a wool dyed with the blood of a chilazon fish. Chilazon fish is a specific fish that it's a blue-green kind of dye, but that chilazon fish only grew in the Mediterranean. So this is not something they would pick up in the desert. It had to be something that they had previously already brought with them. And additionally, the argaman for the pishtan, the linen was then also dyed in argaman, which is like a purplish color. And that again, that would be have to have done been something from that they would have brought with them. So when Rashi is not addressing the meaning of the words, rather he's explaining why the Bnei Yisrael carried exotic dyes when traveling in the desert, and large quantities of flax and that was already spun and woven into linen. All these materials were already ready. Why were they already ready? Because we had a tradition handed down from Yaakov Avinu that these things would be required in the building of the Mishkan and the Tabernacle when we leave Mitzrayim. So this ties in with this question about Moses said, how will they know? When I go down to Egypt and tell the elders that it's time to go, God sent me, how will they know that you actually sent me and it's not just some, another false prophet, right? And God told him, you mentioned pokad pakadati. I will surely remember you, right? This was the message that Yaakov told Yosef, and Yosef told the Shvatim, the tribes, and it was passed down generation from generation, that when the time for redemption comes, he will say, pakad pakadati, I will surely remember you. The promise that God made, that I will surely remember you. And if he's already making that promise and passing that down, he's also passing down, here are the things you will need when you go out of Egypt. You will need a tremendous amount of cedar wood and techeles and argamon and all these other things that you will need when it comes to building a house for God, and a traveling house for God in the wilderness. So all of this has already been passed down through the generations as a keepsake. Remember to prepare for when the time comes. When you come into my house, you'll see by the doorway there's a tambourine. And there was a tradition that when the women left Mitzrayim, they all carried tambourines with them, and those tambourines were what they sang, the Shira Sayam, the song of the sea, that Moses sang and Miriam repeated with all the ladies, and they sang and danced with these tambourines. Where did the tambourines come from? The women had complete faith that promised redemption would come, and they were prepared for it. How did they prepare for it? They kept tambourines by the door, ready to go when the time would come. They were ready to celebrate. They were already prepared and ready to celebrate when the celebration would come. And so it talks to that betachon, that tremendous trust that the Jewish people had in God, not only when Moses did all the miracles, but even before then, that the promise that our sages had passed down through the ages, that Mashiach will come, or in that case, that the Geula will come from the Egyptian exile, and that we will go up to the promised land, and we will rejoice in the promised land together. And this was part of the promises that was given over from Yaakov to Yosef and the 12 tribes from the very get-go.